is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Serious Angler podcast, powered by our friends over at X2 Power Batteries. We're back with the captain, Mr. Andy Full, and as always, I'm your host, Bailey Egbrett. Andy, it is post ICAST week, and I think we got to kick things off with an apology, actually, to our viewers and our listeners, because I told them there would be an episode last week. There wasn't. I always think that we can manage around sometimes to get an episode out with crazy weeks like ICAST, and then I always underestimate ICAST week and how busy it actually is. So unfortunately, no episode last week. So I apologize to the people. I got a few DMs asking if there's something wrong, why there wasn't an episode.
Hey, at least people care, right? Like at least we're putting out a quality platform that people will actually care if we miss an episode. So I guess that is saying something. So thank you to the people who reached out to Bailey to check on him. So I mean, if there's someone that you need to check on, it is probably him. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm just kidding, buddy. Yes.
I apologize to the people, but we are back, and I can't guarantee that there's not going to be some weeks coming up where I won't miss anything, because I'll tell you guys what, if you've seen my August calendar and my October calendar, either Andy might be riding solo or you guys are going to get some pre-recorded shows, because I have several like 2-week benders in the coming months, trip wise, for work and tournament wise and things like that. And
tournament work, fly probably out, come back, drive overnight, fish a tournament, that kind of stuff you're talking.
Like here, I'll give you an example of what one of the situations is that I'm looking at here. So let's look at August. We're going to prepare the people. So August, the second week of August, I fly out that Monday evening, have a deal I have to be at for a brand Tuesday, fly to my work event that Wednesday from the location I already flew to, do a work trip till Thursday night, fly home, get in the truck that I have to pack the weekend before to drive overnight down to the Susky in time to get down there for the Kayak Adventure Series on the Susquehanna River. Fish that tournament Friday and Saturday, get Sunday with the wife, because I'll try to drive home and not fall asleep Saturday evening. And then the entire Monday to Friday, I have to go on a pretty dang cool trip out in the Midwest. It's for work. So that's literally, I get to see my wife for one day because that Friday I fly back after the trip and then I have a tournament the next day. So it's just madness, dude. But I love it. I live for it. I'm all about it. I'd rather do that than be sitting at home every single day. So I can't complain, but I'm more telling the viewers and listeners here that it might be, we're going to try our damnness to get episodes out, but there's no guarantee on those weeks that we might have.
Sounds like it's going to be an interesting month of August. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, because then we might even have a whole weekend planned. So it'll be interesting. And because those, what's crazy too is those 2 weeks directly coincide with our last 2 fantasy fishing shows. So that might be interesting.
Oh, I can run those. That's no problem.
You're like, yeah, screw you, pal. Get off of fantasy fishing. We don't want you
here. Yeah, those ones are easy. I can run those ones.
Yeah.
Frankly, these are pretty easy to run as well. So, I'll gladly do whatever I need to do.
Yeah, honestly, for the people, podcasting really isn't the actual podcast. Once you get to the show itself, it's the easiest part. Like I was joking offline with our guest we're about to get on here, Mr. Justin Royal, apologizing because I think we were trying to get him on. It was like what? It's like 2 months ago or something like that.
No, I feel like we tried to like a couple of years ago and just something never lined up as well. So
there's been countless people where it's like scheduling is the hardest part, and it's 100% not on any party. It's literally like, because scheduling is the hardest thing, because when you get on people that are badass, just like our guest that's coming on here, like they live busy lives, we live busy lives, and trying to get those 2 busy lives to find some free time at the same time, it's quite difficult. But I think without further ado, Andy, speaking of that, we should get our first guest on here.
Yes.
Mr. Justin Royal. What's going on, dude?
What's up, guys? How y'all doing? Thanks for having me.
Yes,
I feel like it's a long time overdue to have you on.
Absolutely. It's a long time coming for sure. I'm glad we finally able to make it happen.
Yeah, he's like, screw you guys. What took you so long?
No, that's all on me. I'll take the blame, man.
No. There's no blame here. We're just glad to get you on board and get you on the show, dude. Because
likewise,
like I told you a little bit offline, I've been following for probably a good 2-ish years now. And from the content side, I definitely take inspiration from. I love the things that you post. You put out very positive vibes, very good life messages to people. And you hit on it a little bit before the show where it's the quality over quantity. And that's, I think, really what you're all about, is building the people around your community. And I think you do a really good job of that. And so we'll love to dig into that. But before we do, man, like, tell us a little bit about you. Obviously there's 89,000 people that subscribe to your channel that know about you. So congrats on 89K. But for the other non 89,000 people, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into fishing.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin Royal. I guess I'm a fishing YouTuber, as weird as that is to say. I don't like to refer to myself like that, but it is what it is. I've been fishing my whole life. Bass fishing full time since 2019, dumping everything I have into the whole, social media thing. And it's pretty much been full bore ever since then. It's taken over. So, yeah.
Do you feel like the term YouTuber is still as taboo, if you will, in the fishing industry as it was 5 or so years ago?
It's weird. It's weird to me. Oh, not in the fishing industry. I think it's standard practice now. Everybody has a channel now. But I think it's weird as a 40-year-old man referring to myself as a YouTuber, but that's what I do. I fish, I film, I make silly fishing videos, and somehow it's turned into a career, and I'm very blessed and grateful.
Heck yeah, man. Well, kind of bring us along the timeline here. So like, when did you realize, or when did you, I guess, get into filming your days, and then when did you realize, hey, let's put these on YouTube?
Yeah, I'd love to go through this with you. So actually, my fishing journey, believe it or not, as far as social media goes, began on Instagram. When they first released Instagram stories back in the day, I was posting my fish catches to Instagram. But what really got me back into fishing was I was riding motorcycles all the time, and I crashed and broke my arm. And then I broke it as pretty much as bad as you can break it. And then had to go through like a really long recovery and physical therapy and all this. And when I finally got the go ahead from the doctors to go back out and start doing stuff outdoors, I couldn't ride, and I was trying to find something to do. And I just happened to look over, and I saw my couple rods sitting over in the corner of the garage. I was like, you know what? I just moved here to Central Texas, totally different style of fishing. I was like, I'm gonna go see if I can catch a fish. And I did. And it took back over. It's been full bore. Shortly after that, I sold my boat, bought my first bass boat. I'm on my second bass boat, started fishing practically every day, filming it, posting it, and then it just took off. And now here we are. Started working with a couple really awesome companies that put a little energy behind me and built an incredible community of, like you were saying, awesome people on YouTube that are like diehard supporters. I may not be like the biggest channel, but man, the people that I have in my corner are incredible, and I couldn't do it without them. I owe it all to the community, the audience, the people that engage. So it's awesome. The Heater family.
Yeah. So I feel like that's a good point, because I think in the last, let's say since COVID, I think that's the big boom when we're talking about everybody having a YouTube channel, people on social. We'll even say there's been a lot of podcasts since then too. And I think for some folks, the ones that are still doing well now, like yourself, it's the people that prioritize the community over the views. Yes, views can obviously increase your growth and your total follower count, we'll call it, but the views, especially nowadays, I feel like is very short term. Where if you're building the community and the people that you're really connecting to, that's how you attribute to the long-term sustainability as a creator. Would you agree?
Well, not only that, but you'll go crazy if you get too sucked in and hung up on the numbers. You can't let that run your life. It's good to pay attention to that side of things at times, you just, because you want to pay attention to, your progress, but you cannot get hung up. If there are dips, if numbers go down, they will go down. If all of a sudden you lose 1,000 subscribers overnight, or you get sucked out of the algorithm or into the algorithm, it just happens. I've seen it happen over and over and over to myself, and you just have to keep rolling with it. And if you really love it, dump your heart into it, make good content, stay consistent. And that's what I try to do. I'm just a nerd making fishing videos, dude. Like I'm not a tournament angler. I'm not a guide or a pro or a biologist. I'm just a dude that loves bass fishing and now turned it into like a living. So
yeah.
Stoked.
Yeah, you got a great mix of content as well, as from like the specific bait side to, you know, educating people on stuff that's working for you setup wise, things like that, all the way to the fishing content. So it gives people a great mix to pick and choose from, and you can almost kind of tap yourself into some different niches. But going back to your point, there was some good advice that I got from the YouTube side where it's, you can use the numbers to help you learn from a trending standpoint of what's working, what's not working. But if you're going to pursue YouTube long term, like you mentioned, have passion for it, you need to just post and ignore the numbers. Use the numbers as learning tools, not as a level of if you're doing good or you're doing bad. Because at the end of the day, content is content. It just
I always tell people when they ask me for advice, I always do tell people, you know, just make good content, you know, because there's content is never ending. It's endless. You have an infinite amount of content, but you got to figure out a way to make it stand out and at least connect to a good, you know, subsect of people, a cross section of people that are down to like stay tuned in. And I feel like being consistent, doing what you enjoy doing, do whatever you want to do, and don't worry about what you think people want to see at first. And then maybe start incorporating a little bit of, like you said, the patterns and the analytics and what you do. But I don't let any of that dictate what I do. I let passion and joy and sheer, like, just heart dictate every video that I make. I don't sit down and write out a script or a plan or anything. All of my videos are stream of consciousness. You know, when I'm talking to the camera, I just let it flow. And that's how I make my content. So I feel like people will know if you're being fake, and they'll know if you're actually passionate about what you're talking about, and they'll see right through if you're fake. So be real for sure if you're going to try to put yourself out there like that.
Yeah. I liked what you were saying about, you know, make the content you want to make, and the people will come. You know, you'll find your niche.
Chances are. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Chances are, if you enjoy doing something, there are other people out there that also enjoy doing that. Then it's up to you to make engaging content on said thing. So that's what I try to do.
Yeah, I mean, even if you don't think there might be out there, that doesn't mean there isn't going to be. Because, like, you got to think, there's always a first for something. There was always the first person that was posting videos on YouTube about fishing. There was always the first person that started streaming Call of Duty. There was, you know, it's changed.
I was going to say we kind of got it easy because, you know, millions of people love fishing. So we already know there are tons of people out there that love that. You just got to find the people that connect with you. And that's a powerful thing once you build that community. And I feel like I've done a good job of keeping quality folks in my corner, in my circle. Yeah.
And I feel like the best judge of that isn't necessarily the viewership numbers, but it's the amount of comments and things you get, or the amount of DMs that you may get. That's a big sense of community, how you can tell if you're really connecting with people.
I make it a point to answer every DM that I receive. It gets insane at times, but it's important.
Yeah, you're like, damn, these serious angler guys. I hope when they're into my freaking DMs.
No. Don't worry.
Well, dude, so getting back to fishing here a little bit, we talked a little offline how, you know, a lot of your content fishing wise is on these clear Texas lakes, and absolutely love that. But you mentioned that's not always been the case. You know, that you grew up in mud, and talk about that transition, man.
I come from the chocolate milk. You know, I grew up in Northeast Texas, Lake Tawakoni, Lake Ray Hubbard, Lake Fork area. And so I grew up fishing those muddy bottom Texas lakes, chartreuse, black and blue, that type of deal. And then when I came to Central Texas, I moved to hill country, and it's like a lot of limestone, you know, lined lakes that are super clear. Colorado River. I live on the crown jewel of the Highland Lakes, as it's referred to, Lake Travis, and super clear water, especially when the lake is high and clean. And I sort of had to relearn bass fishing from a new side. Started using a whole lot more natural colors, and YouTube was a big part of that. I've actually started doing YouTube in 2014, so it's been 10 years now since I started my channel. But it wasn't always a fishing channel. But when I first started fishing again, I did like everybody, hopped on YouTube and started trying to learn about fishing clear water. And there were a couple, channels that ended up just teaching me a lot. And I was like, I think I could maybe do this. And, I was making motorcycle videos and vlogs, life vlog type content. And I was like, I want to make my first fishing video. And I made my first fishing video. And there was a dude that had been watching me for my motorcycle stuff. And he was like, dude, I don't know anything about fishing. I don't care about fishing. I don't watch fishing. I'm not interested in fishing, but this was awesome. You should keep making these. And I just remember that comment. It stuck in my head. So I just ran with it from there.
Does that guy still watch today? Do you know?
I have no idea. It's
still sliding comments.
There's a lot of stuff rattling around up there. It's been a minute, but that comment stuck with me for sure. And yeah,
if you don't mind me asking, what were you doing before you went full-time YouTube?
So I was in the aerospace industry. Yeah, basically, okay. I worked for a government contractor that took 70s, 80s, and 90s era aircraft and retrofitted them with the most advanced surveillance technology on the planet. So in short, I built spy planes I built spy planes, airplanes.
So you were the OG live scope.
Yeah. From space, live scope.
Dude, that is freaking badass.
Yeah, I've been around airplanes my whole life. My dad's a pilot, worked on an active airfield, and did that for a decade before I rolled the dice on all this and finally found my groove and started making it viable.
That's awesome. Yeah. What would you say is, because obviously there's a lot of people doing it. There's people in the midst of making the jump. There's people that, I feel like now is a weird time in generation where like kids are literally growing up and they're saying, and
I want to be a YouTuber.
Yeah. So making that jump, what do you think is the biggest adjustment for people or the biggest challenge?
I mean, right now it's still the biggest challenge as far as like making a living off YouTube. Yeah,
like that, and trying to adjust from basically making it as a entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's heavy. I had to trial by fire because I'm like one man army. I do everything. So I had to, as I'm sure you guys are familiar with, learning all about how formulating an LLC, doing taxes for a business. I sell merchandise. I have an online store, so I do have to do taxing and keep account for multiple businesses, and it's all just I put in more work doing this, making this work, and making sure I'm successful at this than I ever did at my 9-to-5 corporate job, which it was a really good job, a really good career. But this right here is like, when you love it, it's okay to work 13 hours a day. It's all good.
Yeah. You got to live and breathe it.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Has any of that trickled into, like, do you still kind of dabble in that aerospace nowadays just for fun, or are you just
no. So both my parents are retired, and there's a lot of, aircraft memorabilia at both my and their house. So I'm around memories, but that's about it nowadays. Unless I go to the airport.
Right. Yeah, you always see these random freaking YouTube channels that are just gigantic with the most random thing ever. Like I could totally see just starting a random aerospace collection YouTube channel, and it's that I've heard of other creators that try to find those small niches. That this is a whole different rabbit hole that I don't think we need to go down because it'll be hours on end. But how they create other channels in popular niches just for the pure fact that it's added viewership, or
people that like watching model trains crash or something weird like that.
Like the biggest one, like geocaching's a huge one right now. The what is it? The what's the thing where people go out with the magnet? You guys know what I'm talking about? Where they like scan the ground. I'm totally blowing it on the name for this.
Metal detecting?
Yes. Thank you. Good Lord.
That was blowing up like a minute ago. Is it still popping off? The metal detecting video?
I just saw the Duck Dynasty boys have their whole TV show.
You fell down a metal detecting rabbit hole, bro.
Or like the guys that throw like magnets off of a bridge to see if they can catch.
Magnet fishing.
Magnet fishing.
Yeah,
that's a big one now. Dude, but yeah, like literally the Duck Dynasty TV show ended and they made a new one, and all they do is go do that magnet stuff.
Right on, brother.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Those Robertsons.
Yeah, I tell you what.
They're metal detecting and hunting ducks. Like
I'm with it.
Hey, they're good people. I've gotten a chance to know Justin Martin a decent amount. And he is like they might be famous as all get out, but they are still salt of the earth, genuine good old boys.
Right on.
Yeah, it's freaking cool, man. But sorry, I warned you offline that this was a very loose outline. We might go all different directions, but
you derailed like that model train, bro.
Yeah, that's right. I'm telling you, that's all this show is, just a train wreck.
Model train
wreck. So from the dirty, the muddy water, getting into your clear Texas lakes, what would you say is the biggest adjustment fishing wise?
Color choice, simple as that. Color choice,
line size,
and it was I stopped fishing for a while. I started fishing when I was like 3 or 4, as soon as I could do it, and then fished all the way up until I got old enough to ride and got my motorcycle license, and then I did that and put the fishing on the back burner. But when I started fishing again, things had changed a little bit. Bait casters were, more advanced and nicer gear for less money, and a whole new world of modern baits and techniques and colors and things that I had never experienced. I grew up throwing, chartreuse spinnerbait and dragging a Texas rig worm. And it just really opened my eyes to all the different, how much you can actually nerd out on bass fishing. And I just, like we said, I fell down the rabbit hole deep and never came back out. And now it's been my life full bore for close to 6 years now. It's crazy.
What's been like the recent trend or category, like glide bait, things like that you've been going down?
Say that again. You cut out for just a second.
So like what's been like the recent trend or I guess category of baits, if you will, that you've been going down?
Everybody's scoping, everybody's scoping with little boogers and giblets and things. And that's cool. But I'm just I'm old school power hour, trying to force feed them something fun. And that's just what I like to do the most. I fished offshore so much in the pre-spawn this year. And then during the spawn, we did so much sight fishing. I'm back to beating the banks, and I'm after the ones that split shallow, at least for now. And I can't scope anymore for the moment. So everybody's doing that, the little minnow techniques on the scope. But me, dude, I fall down the same rabbit holes over and over and over again. I'm in the summertime pattern. I'm throwing deep cranks, frogs, fluke, whopper plopper, multi-joint, and dragging a worm. Like that's what I'm doing right now.
It just sounds like fun. That's all that sounds like.
Yeah, that's a good time. That's a good time right there. That's what I did all day today. I got all my setups out of the boat, just in case y'all wanted to talk about any of that.
We're gonna dig into it and see if we can't get any goodies out of you. But
I'm down.
Before we get into that, I just wanted to hit on like it's been interesting how scoping's been enjoyable and it's been eye-opening to some things, but it's funny when you go down and you do that for a while and then you finally get back to the bank and you're catching them and you're like, I feel like a purist again. It's almost like a weird feeling when you go back to not looking down at your screen. And
I separate it because fishing old school like that, just power fishing, assessing conditions and picking a spot that you think might hold fish and then fishing it to find out. That's a surprise. That's a jack in the box. Boom, it pops out. Ooh, there's a bite. On the scope, It's a little bit different. It's cool when they bite, but it's not a Jack in the Box. You know, if you're watching, So it's just a different thing. Both are awesome. I love doing both. I get an adrenaline rush all the same. I did a video on that, where I was offshore in some grass and I was using the scope to catch them over and over and over again. And I was talking about how I swear if you're against a live scope and you were to come out here and do this right now, you would not be against this. Like, this is nothing but a good time, dude. We're just swinging on them over and over and over. So yeah.
I'm with you.
I don't know where I was going with that, but anyways.
Yeah, no, you're good. And so back on the baits thing, it looks like by the sounds of it that Sixth Sense is coming out with a bunch of new stuff.
Constantly, dude. Constantly innovating. Expando commando, man. There's so much fun stuff. Some of it I can talk about, some of it I can't, but I've got some cool stuff right here, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have that I know the answer to.
Yeah. Well, definitely don't want to put you in any like bad position or bind, obviously, talking about anything, but I don't know what is able to be talked about, but I did see some sneak peeks on old Milliken's Instagram. They got at least some minnow looking bait. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the new bait it's actually named after Ben's boy Ozzy, the Ozzy minnow. And that's going to be a sick little bait, especially on the back of a chatterbait. I have a couple somewhere. Haven't had a chance to fish with them yet though, but there's a lot of really cool stuff coming from Sixth Sense.
Is there any of them that you're allowed to talk about that you'd like to talk about? It's all good if not.
I'm trying to think of something that you may not have seen. That I don't know the bait camp. If you guys have heard about the Sixth Sense and Tackle Warehouse collaboration, they did a really awesome set of exclusive colors with Tackle Warehouse. So that's really cool. If you haven't seen that, check it out. As far as like new product goes, nothing that I can really spill the beans on, but I've seen some stuff and I've got some stuff sent to me recently with notes instructing me not to show it on camera that I will be able to talk about soon that I know everybody's going to be stoked on. So there's always fun stuff coming. What
it sounds like is once you got your content out on your platform, we'll have to get you out on the Lure Lab, our tackle specific show here on the podcast network.
Oh, I'd love to, man. I love playing tackle box. Yeah, that's right up my alley. That sounds like a good time.
Pencil them in, Andy.
Yeah. I'll shoot you a message.
Sweet. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it looks pretty dang cool, man. At least from what we've seen, leaked or teased, if you will, and it's definitely sounds pretty awesome coming from Sixth Sense. So that's pretty dang cool. But yeah, I guess whatever you got near you, man. Like what's been popping down by you? What's been the clutch?
Well, I'll start with the obvious one. What everybody's probably thinking. It's summertime, so I'm throwing a frog. And this is the new Sixth Sense Hush frog. It's a little finesse frog. A little different than the Vega. Walks effortlessly. You just think about it walking and it just starts walking. It's nice. I had a few blow ups on that today, but no full blown takers. And then I've always got a fluke on deck or a flush, a weightless jerk bait. But I caught all my fish on a plopper today. 110 whopper plopper. Monkey butt is the color. That's my favorite color. That monkey butt. That's fire.
Is it your favorite color because of the color, or is it your favorite color because of the name?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, dude, it's summertime, so you got to be cranking. I'm cranking deep. This right here. This is actually one of those Tackle Warehouse exclusive colors.
It's like a crappie color almost.
C15. It's called Pro Matte Blue or something like that. And then the best cranking reel, in my opinion, the Shimano Bantam. Super fire. And
I gotta say, I feel like Sixth Sense is very, very underrated in the colors that you guys put out.
Oh yeah,
that's what they're originally known for. Casey started the company painting baits in his dorm room in college, and he was his people just started buying his baits like in the fishing community in the tournament scene, and his college buddies were like buying baits off of him. And then he started putting his custom paints up on eBay, and they started blowing up. And then the rest is history, dude. He like built the company from the ground up just like that. That's the whole company originally was like known for paint schemes. Like that's what it was all about. So that's one of the things that sets them apart is they have just insane colors across the board. So many different amazing.
Yeah, that one's dirty. That's got to be one of the best colors that 6th Sense has dropped.
That's that Magnum Catwalk. And yeah, dude. And I have like this right here is a Casey's custom. This is one that Casey actually airbrushed by hand. Whoa. Here's another one. Here's one of his crankbaits, dude.
That's legit.
Yeah, dude. So those were painted by Casey, but that's how the whole company got started, dude. The patterns, the colors, and now it's more. They're focused on. I mean, they've expanded. They've got crappie gear, panfish gear, catfish, terminal tackle. I mean, they have literally everything. But yeah, the backbone of the company originally was like super detailed paint schemes on hard baits. But yeah, the last bait that I'm throwing this summer, aside from like a big worm, multi-joint swim bait. I love it. This is the Trace, and boom. That's the move.
How's that like? You're gonna slow roll? You're gonna burn? You're gonna kind of mix it up a little bit?
I'm burning it and twitching it. You know, I'm throwing it on a 7-to-1, so I'm rolling fast. It's a fast sink, but I keep it up high in the water column. And yeah, I'm looking for something that wants to mow it down. Wolf packs, hungry eaters. Yeah, turning and burning for the most part, man. And then if I have to slow down, I'm dragging a worm. You know, Texas rig worm.
I know some people hate the dragon, but I was doing that this past weekend, getting offshore, dragging the big.
If you ain't dragging, you ain't bagging.
Yeah.
It's that Boosa ribbon tail.
Oh yeah,
that's a fireworm for the summer. I like that one. And then I've been throwing the Boosa shaky worm a lot. And that green pumpkin juice, little 1-2 punch. Yeah. Oh yeah, a rat. You can't forget about throwing a rat in the summertime. That's a buka rat, and throwing the rat in the summer is fun. That's always a good time when they eat a little mammal, a little varmint.
When would be the best time to throw the rat, in your opinion? Like, is it morning? Is it right before dark? Like,
if I'm trying to go get on a rat bite, I'll just go out there and start fishing it. And if they hit it, I'll just keep throwing it. You know, when you're throwing a bigger swim bait, it might not be numbers. You know, you might be looking for that one, but yeah, that's a different kind of bite. That's fun. And a small wake bait in the summer. Don't sleep on a small wake bait, you know, like something like the Movement 80 wake, something that just kicks on the surface. Super fire.
Is it 6th Sense has one? It's called the Speed Wake. Is that
the Speed Wake? No, that's something. That's a fun bait right there. You can just burn that bait as you want on an 8-to-1, and it will not blow out. That bait is so stable and so much fun, and you cannot outrun a fish. Reel as fast as you want. If a fish wants to eat it, they will eat it.
Yeah,
that's a fun bite.
I know it's pretty popular on like the TVA, as well as if you have any TVA as well in the fall when like the bigger bait is dying off, and it's a lot of like that smaller bait bite. I know a lot of guys throw that there, as well as if you're on, like for us, Andy, where we have heavy alewife populations in our lakes, and it's that speed wake is like the perfect size and proportion imitation of a big alewife. So I know some guys throw that up here too, but man, that thing's pretty dirty.
Yeah, I need to throw that. I haven't thrown it in a minute, but I love it. It's really fun.
Yeah. I've been going down the glide bait rabbit hole the past year or two, and really this past year especially. And dude, you brought that rat up. I have a few expensive rats that hopefully my wife doesn't see the credit card bill for, because I gotta blame my buddy Alex May. Dude, it's just one of those things that just looks like it feels primal. If that makes any sense, when you throw in that big rat, that big swim bait, it just
because you get to watch them eat a lot of the time.
Yeah,
you're connecting with your primal self. Because back in the day, if you saw a fish, or even just fishing in general, I believe, at least partially, the reason why we fall in love with fishing so much and we get that feeling. You know what I'm talking about? The feeling. Everybody, I don't even need to explain that. The feeling that you get when you set the hook and you know that you actually got a bite and you've actually got a fish and you're actually about to catch one. That feeling back in the day, that used to mean that you got to eat today.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Like in the primal, talking about primal days, that meant food. So that meant we get to not be hungry tonight. So I feel like in some way our DNA like taps into that, and it's like it lets you know this is good. This is a good thing, and we just want to keep feeling it, dude. It's crazy, dude. I never met one I didn't want to swing on.
Well, and it's crazy. And nowadays, like you say that, and nowadays it's like we crucify people for keeping bass.
Which, like, and we'll probably talk about
We're
it.
doing too much crucifying. Right? Can everybody just chill?
Yeah.
I mean, like, if you think about it, if we kept more bass, we'd probably have bigger bass, which is crazy to think about, right?
This is how it works. Yeah.
Hey, it's coming around though. I gotta say, there's been more people that have been posting about keeping bass and how like
I've seen it. It's starting to, the conversation is starting to kind of bubble a little bit.
Specifically with Alabama spots, and everyone's just taking those wherever they catch them, which is good.
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, we got Guadalupe bass here that are just crazy competition for the largemouth, but they're small and they're by the thousands, if not the millions. I don't know. And they're extremely aggressive and extremely fast. So that's one of the reasons that our fish have a hard time, getting over the hump. But yeah, we need to take a bunch of quads and a bunch of small fish out of my fishery, but it's overwhelming with dinks. We got to get through the dinks to get to the donkeys.
Yeah.
Can't catch them all if you don't catch them small. Shout out to Captain Ron. Like I said, man, I don't care. I always have fun when they eat it.
Heck yeah, dude. But I think it's a legit thing. I know a couple of my Carolina buddies down there in Lake Norman, which is usually known for, smaller fish, smaller bags, obviously has potential. Yeah. Their tournament weights have been going up, and because the trails have been making a concerted effort where it's like, hey, if it's under a certain inch limit, keep them. Like bring them in, keep them, and they've seen slowly these tournament weights go up and up.
So they do this thing called Guadapalooza here every year because you can keep your limit of those, and they have a tournament and it's all quads and they keep them all and they bring them all in and do a big giant fish fry. But that's just once a year. So yeah, but
they're probably tasty little critters too when they're that little.
Yeah, some good eating.
So, dude, he just caught a freaking 10-pounder recently.
Yes, man, I did. I actually did. I'm stoked on that still.
You gotta walk us through it, brother.
I've been fishing for that fish, not just my whole life, but really hard for the past few years, doing this sight fishing thing with my buddy Teacock. Caught her during the spawn, sight fishing from a tower on the front of a bass boat. It's something that is a few more people are doing it, but not a lot of people are doing it. You don't see many boats with towers on them. Platforms are getting a little bit more prominent out here in our area because people are seeing us doing it, and I'm sure it'll spread out, and I'm sure we're not the first people to do it and whatever. I'm just noticing that I'm seeing it a little bit more, but it's not prominent. But standing up on the platform, had my shot at a lot of really big fish in the past few years and caught some really big fish in the past few years and lost what I feel was probably a couple different double digits in the process and was never able to get it done until this year. Filmed for 2 months straight during the spawn, fished many of those days, ended up using 8 total days worth of footage. It was what I was calling the best bed fishing video of 2024. And I do believe that is the case. It's some of the most insane big bass fishing footage that I've ever captured and that I've ever seen come out in one video as far as big fish. It was amazing. And I was stoked to be able to share that this year. And on the 8th day, it finally happened. 10 pounds, 12 ounces on the 6 cents sweep, the best bed fishing bait on the planet. Actually fished for this fish for a couple hours and then left her for half a day and then came back to her and finally caught her. But it was a crazy, crazy catch from the top to tower of power. And yeah, my first double digit. It was amazing, dude. Fish of a lifetime.
Trying to look up the sweep. I don't know if I've heard of the 6 cent sweep.
I got it right here, dog.
Let's see here.
That's it.
Oh, shoot. I haven't seen that before.
It's a soft swim bait. Let me see. Oh man, my setup's just out of reach that I caught her on, but yeah, it's a soft swim bait, and I'll rig it up with a red bead and a 1/2 ounce tungsten, and then peg it with a big 7/0 stout hook, and yeah, that's it. Fishing it, dropping it into the beds, letting it fall nose down into those beds. And dude, I don't know what it is about this bait, but I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Go watch my sight fishing videos from the past 3 years. I can't tell you how many absolute freaks we've caught on that bait right there, including like my previous PB before this, 9.5 pounds, 9 pounds, 8 ounces. And then this year, every giant fish, which we caught, I don't know how many 7s, 8s, 9s, and then the 10, 12, all on this bait right here.
Nice.
That's freaking sick. I'll for people that are tuning in, what I'll do in the show notes is I'll tag the video to the 10 pounder so you guys can go and check out specifically for that. But
thanks, brother.
When you say 7/0 hook, does that mean, like, I'm assuming EWG?
Yeah, EWG screw lock. Yep, like an owner beast, something like that.
Yeah.
Give them the beats.
Give them the root, dude.
What setup?
Heater series, 7/8 extra heavy fast swim bait special. It's a swim bait rod that we designed for heavy swim baiting, but it's also a meat stick that's great for heavy flipping or catching giants off of beds and hoisting them from the tower. Yeah, 7/8 extra heavy fast, full backbone, 25 pound fluorocarbon. Corrado 200, dude. And the sweep.
And that tower,
Yeah,
that was like, you gotta, like, you run the trolling motor with like a remote type of deal, right? And you lock it down, straps, all that jazz.
Using the remote, tower strap down. Yeah, my buddy Teacock, shout outs to my boy Teacock, Captain Teacock's Fishing Tours. He built a custom platform. He's got like connection points mounted on his boat where the straps hook into, and it's all super legit, sturdy, stable. 4 foot of added elevation on front of the bass boat, and it changes the game because these giants, they're spawning in 8, 10, 12, 15 feet of water. And if you're not up there, and if you don't have a good pair of polarized lenses, shout outs to Waterland, you're not going to see them. You're not going to see them. And yeah, that's the deal, dude. So the tower is where it's at. If you want to catch the big ones, you can go around and pluck little buck bass off of shallow beds all day with a Senko, but that's not what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
You know, we're looking for that 10, 12, and we got her.
Now, Andy and I are both out of Buffalo. We're up here in smallmouth country.
Okay.
Has anybody tried? I mean, I don't know. I guess on water clarity, I guess my question is, has anybody tried using a flogger?
I'm sure. I don't have one, so I don't know, but I'm sure there's some maniac out there that's tried it. But
I wonder how good of a hook set you'd be able to get into, like one of those giant bass that'll bend over.
Oh yeah. If you're talking about actually catching her while you're flogging, no, she's gonna take you for a ride. There's no way.
But I could see, to that point though, Andy, like I could see one guy's running the trolling motor and then one guy's constantly just flogging, looking.
Yeah, it could be.
Because like, even I guess on that platform, you could probably still, go buy some and not even realize they're there. Whereas the flogger,
it's not necessary,
Yeah.
With the tower and good lenses.
What's the water visibility like?
It just depends on the day, depends on the rain, depends on the inflow. But I mean,
on average, would you say, like, what's your average visibility?
So you just
the lake you fish? Yeah,
talking my lake, the lake I fish the most right now. The lake's dirty because it's so low. We're at like 41% capacity.
Oh, that is low.
Historically low. Yeah. We just got a lot of rain. It's supposed to come up 7 or 8 feet over the next few days. So we got a good inflow right now. So the water's super dirty. But if the lake is full and it's summertime and it's hot and the zebra mussel population is popping off, we have zebra mussels. They filter out the water. I mean, it would get 8, 10 foot, 12 foot on the lower end by the dam, deeper, super clear, oceanic blue, clear water on this lake because it's all limestone, know. But right now it's just so low. And then whenever it does rain a little bit like it is right now, it just muddies up so easily. So it's dirty. It's dirty again.
Dang.
Lots of grass too for the first time. Lots of hydrilla.
That's probably a good sign, though. I mean,
find the grass, find the bass. It's great, but it's just different. It's just different because I came here and learned Highland Reservoir, super clear water, rocky ledge fishing, and now it's like it's so different, and the bass know too. So it's more challenging, more pressure. It's a different game than it was 5 years ago, but I'm down for the get down.
So if you had a month to to get out of Texas.
Oh yeah, okay.
You'll film some content and just go fun fishing. Where would you choose?
Well, Peacock talks about how insane that smallmouth stuff is up in New York. He takes a trip to New York somewhere. I'm not sure where, but I would love to go do something like that. But aside from that, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, these are the places that I like to cruise through and go fishing. I have some people in Georgia that have been inviting me out to hit some water out there that sounds pretty incredible. But that all sounds like a good little road trip. Just head east from Texas and hit it all.
Yeah. Have you made the trips yet, like out of state?
I was in Tahoe a few weeks ago for my birthday, and that was incredible. Lake Tahoe was like swimming. It's like a swimming pool. It's absolutely clear. It's most beautiful. It's awesome. It was tough fishing, but that was incredible to go out there and hit that. So I'd love to go back and do some of that. I'd love to take my boat because I had to rent a boat, try to make it happen on somebody else's vessel. But yeah, dude, I love the clear water. So I'd like to go. And obviously, like Clear Lake, California, legendary. And then there's some places in Tennessee that I'm sure would be awesome. But
yeah. We got a comment from MJ here. It says, I've heard rumor that Tahoe has some bass. Is that true?
This is true. In the Keys, there's largemouth and smallmouth. Yeah, in the Keys. The Tahoe Keys is where you want to head. That's where the area of the lake that gets shallow enough for the water to get warm enough for them to want to play. It's super cold lake because it's all the melted water coming down from the mountains to fill that lake. So it's like, even though it's the middle of summer, it's super cold. Like, I don't know, probably in the 50s or something. I mean, it was an adjustment if you were planning on jumping in.
Isn't it a big party lake?
Oh yeah, massive, dude. I mean, it's massive. I think it was 190,000. I don't know, some crazy amount of acres. It was huge.
Party lake, but no one's swimming is what's going on.
Yeah, everybody's just sort of like going and seeing the sights. There's some incredible stuff to see on that lake. It's absolutely beautiful. But it was tough fishing while I was there. But there are largies and smallies there. Had a bunch of people DMing me saying, "Hey, go here, do this. This is where I caught them," etc. So I know they're in there.
That's pretty dang cool.
Sweet.
Yeah.
No guides, no bass guides on the lake that I could find. Nobody gonna rent me any sort of bass boat or fishing boat. So
there's no skeeter or nothing to be found.
No.
That's cool, man. The bass nerd in me knows that only thing I know about Lake Tahoe was that they had, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, there was a winter classic, an outdoor game that they played out there on Tahoe. Well, I don't think it was on Tahoe, on the shores of Tahoe.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, out there in like Pacific Northwest, I feel like I've been seeing not a shift, I guess, but it's getting a little bit more tension, if you will, especially Pacific Northwest of intention for bass, things like that. There's some Idaho, a couple of those different states. I see some people making some trips out there, but yeah, man, I hope to see in the content coming up soon, man, making the trips out to some of these different states and give them a whirl. If you come to New York, you'll have to holler at us because we can show you around the local jaunts.
Yeah, I guide on Erie out of Buffalo.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Yeah, that'd be a whole new world. I'd love to get up there.
Yeah, it has its days. That's for sure.
Bet. I can't imagine.
Well, with that said, is there anything upcoming that you're looking forward to putting on the channel, or any trips or anything like that?
I'm back home for the foreseeable future, and I'm fishing Central Texas again. I've sort of been, I did the sight fishing thing for so long, and now I'm just looking forward to getting back to doing my normal thing. So lots of on the water content coming, as well as my usual unboxing and bait breakdown, tackle talk stuff that I do from here in the garage. I like to incorporate a little bit of everything because there are like people that just love the unboxing stuff, and there are people that love the on the water stuff. So I do it all. But lots of on the water stuff coming. I've been fishing every day. I'm fishing again tomorrow. Just got to get on them. Got to figure them out a little bit. It's been a while since I've been out on the home pond. And like I said, we've got water pouring in right now. So the lake's coming up. I've got a lot of freshly submerged vegetation, wet veggies. So I'm going to find them.
Wet veggie.
It's only a matter of time.
Love it.
A wet lettuce, man.
I'm gonna take that, man. I'm gonna start using that up here.
Take it and run with it, man. Wet lettuce.
I'll give you the creds, but I love
Appreciate you.
wet veggies is awesome. Hey, you haven't made apparel on that yet, have you?
It's copyrighted already, bro.
Oh, is it really?
No, I'm just messing with you. No, I haven't. But we can make some wet veggies t-shirts for sure.
Dude, you need to do that.
We need to do a collab. A Serious Angler JR collaboration t-shirt. Wet veggies.
Well, I wasn't trying to take it from you. I mean, we're game to collab, but I was just more really like, if you have that t-shirt, I would buy that ASAP. Because that
wet veggies.
Wet veggies. I'm sure people would eat that up, dude.
That's our new podcast, bro.
Wet veggies.
The wet veggies.
Yep.
Podcast.
The only thing about wet veggies is you might get some weird people tuning into that one.
Hey, this makes it interesting. That's all it is.
Number one.
They're gonna think it's something else.
Hey, that's all right.
Hey, that's how you build an audience, dude.
That's right.
Fair.
You stumbled on this channel.
Multicultural, bro. That's all it is. That's awesome.
Good point.
Well, Andy, you got anything left for Justin before we hit him with our last question here?
Nah, man, you can hit him with the last question.
Hit me with it, bro.
Actually, I'll say I got two. I got one that it's not even really a question. It's more, I would love to see if you have a question for our next two guests coming on here. We're down in your neck of the woods.
Okay.
They're fisheries biologists from Texas. What is one thing you would love to know from them, being the fisheries biologist nerds in your backyard?
Yeah. So, I want to know more about the data regarding fish life after catch and release. Because I hear everything from, in my own experience, I've caught the same fish twice. So I know a lot of times they do go on to live perfectly fine, go on eating. But then I've also heard that, half the fish we catch, or this many percentage of the fish we catch after you release them, they're all going to die anyway. So I'd like to know more about that. Like, is that true? How much truth is there to that? What are the actual numbers on catch and release, and how big of a difference is it making? Yeah, that's just the first thing that popped into my head that I'd be interested to know more about.
Heck yeah. Well, that'll be the first question that we ask them.
Sweet, dude. Awesome.
Here. But yeah, that's a really good one, because there's this really weird bass that is on our lake at KU. It's one of the ones that's blowing up in New York. Just had a state record.
Okay.
And there was this bass that Andy caught 3 years ago that had, remember Andy, the one with the really like janky tail? It was like the fish was like an S because it was deformed. Oh, yeah. Last year and this year caught that bass.
I'll believe it.
So it's like, so what's the deal here?
Dude,
how's that thing even living is my question.
He's just funky looking, man. He's living.
On the same rock?
Same rock.
Oh, man. He said, this is my home.
That's right. All right. So last question for you, Justin.
All right, then.
That is, if you could go out to dinner with 3 individuals, have a nice steak, have a drink, and they could be living 1,000 years ago. They could be alive today. They don't have to be fishing at all. It could be any 3 people. What 3 would you invite?
Yeah, sure. I hate to let the fishing community down on this one, but it's most likely not going to be fishermen. If I could pick anyone in history, I'm going to go number 1, Dimebag Darrell, my guitar hero, greatest guitar player to live.
That's a good one.
Got the Pantera banner back here. So yeah, that's number 1. Number 2, Hunter S. Thompson. I don't know if you know who that is, but he's an author and a journalist and a really interesting human being. One of my favorite writers. Yeah, very, very unique individual that would be insanely fun to sit down to dinner with. And then the third one, dang, dude, this is what opens up just all sorts of possibilities. It's hard for me to fill that third slot, if I'm being honest with you. It's hard not to throw Jesus Christ on the list. I'd probably go there. You'd learn a lot through that one.
Dimebag Darrell and Jesus Christ at the same table. That's very
Hunter S. Thompson mediating, talking about the number 1 podcast episode ever, dude. Yeah. It's gonna blow up.
And you're just sitting there with your popcorn.
They're breaking bread, man, and sipping some wine. That's all they're doing.
That's awesome, bro.
There you go.
Heck
yeah. Well, dude, seriously, appreciate the time. Appreciate you taking time out to get on here and talk with us.
Appreciate y'all having me on, man. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank y'all.
Heck yeah, dude. Well, love to get you back on here, especially get you on a lure lab when those 6 cents baits drop and we can talk about the juice. But
absolutely,
for real, dude.
Yeah, let's
appreciate you. Heck yeah, man. Well,
right,
we'll be talking to you real soon.
Sounds good, man. Later, everybody.
See you, Justin. Well, there you have it, folks. Mr. Justin Royal. If for whatever reason you're living under a rock and you're not subscribed to this dude and watching his content, his YouTube links and everything are down below. You guys can go check those out. Highly encourage you to do so. Good to get him on here. Just a very positive human. I mean, you guys have seen our social with our shows recently. Carl Jochimson. We're just everybody that's on that positive train that's trying to just bring, not even just fishing, but the humanity into a better, less negative place moving forward is always highly encouraged. And we want to surround ourselves with those people. So appreciate it again for Justin for joining us there. And hopefully you guys enjoyed that show with him. And the night is not over. We still have part 2. We still have 2 more folks coming on here. We got Mr. Stephen Bardin and Mr. Jake Norman coming on the show. And Andy, anything else the folks need to know here before we kick it off to X2 for part 2?
I'm excited for part 2.
We're gonna open up some can of worms. I heard Steven likes when we put him on the spot.
Yes.
So we're gonna do a little bit of that. Well, folks, we'll be back with an awesome show with 2 great dudes here with a quick message from X2 Power.
In the world of battery power, a word to the wise: compromise elsewhere.
All right, folks, we are back. Part 2 of the show. I guess for MP3 folks, this will be the Friday show. But for the Tuesday Night Live folks, we are about to bring on 2 very cool individuals that are the Bassin nerds, I guess you should say, of the fishing industry, and ones that are full of knowledge. You guys have seen Steve on the show countless times. But actually, there was a guest, I shouldn't say a guest, sorry, a fan of the show that actually had emailed in here. Let me pull up his exact name to give him credits here, but he sent me a link. I sent this to Steve, and this is actually going to be one of the topics of our conversation tonight. And his name was Jeremy Krismer. So thank you, Jeremy, for sending me this. But we got some pretty cool stuff we're going to get into. So I think without further ado, let's bring these boys in here. First, we got Mr. Stephen Bardin, and Mr. Jake Norman. What's going on, fellas?
Hi, guys. How y'all doing?
Good. I guess Jake, his first time on the show, so I apologize that we've stuck you with Steven. I feel bad that you're.
No, it's okay.
Good to have you.
I know him well enough. I know what I'm dealing with.
No. Everybody, stop. I invited Jake.
Now now that you're here, Steven, we can see you later.
I thought you'd take us 3 out and just let Steve run the show so he can just have the floor,
Hey, yeah. Steve did say that he was at happy hour tonight and that he can run the show by himself. So I think we're just going to let him just take it from here.
Yeah, I got it. You go to bed, Bailey. I got it.
Well, dude, I told him our first guest tonight, Justin Royal, who's down in Texas with you guys. We posed a question to him basically to give you guys a question to kick things off here. And so we'll let it rip with to start the show tonight. He asks, people talk about after you catch a fish, there's always the conjecture that once you catch that fish, you release it. It might release healthy, but sometimes they'll die. And he's curious about the actuality of life, of that, how the chances of that fish living after you catch it and release it. That makes sense.
Not to run your show, Bailey. Can we at least introduce who Jake is?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I'm all over the place here, man.
He's excited, Steve. All right, like
I know, but
I'm being a horrible guest right now. I apologize, Jake.
Guest host.
Here,
You're good.
let me handle
I
this.
forgot already too. It's fine.
Let me handle this.
He said, "I'm just here for the ride."
Yeah.
Jake Norman is someone your audience should know. Yeah, he's someone the entire fishing community should know. Jake is an outstanding biologist with Texas Parks and Wildlife. He has the historic Lake Fork as one of his fisheries, but also, Jake manages the most fisheries and the largest number of people in the entire state. Whenever we talk about a district supervisor, biologist, and Jake is not a Texan, but dang it, we put him under our arm, and he's official now. He is a Texan.
I got here as fast as I could, I like to say.
There you go, brother. So whenever we talk about creating trophy fisheries, whenever we talk about guys who are going to lead the state of Texas for the next 30 years, 20 years, maybe, Jake? 20 years. Let's give him 20 years. All right, 20 more years. Jake Norman is one of those people. So you're going to hear his name. He's going to be our black bass biologist, kind of expert for the state of Texas. Really going to be involved in tournament anglers and what do we do with fish. And I think it's so important to have your audience introduced to him now before he destroys things, right?
Yeah. Well, if you're not a Texan, Jake, then where are you from?
Originally, I grew up in Illinois, actually, Grafton, Illinois. So I always say right where the Illinois and Mississippi rivers came together, actually. So Midwesterner. I claimed Missouri for a while. I went to school in Missouri, actually. Still have family kind of scattered around the Midwest. I've been in Texas since 2013.
Okay.
And 10 years is long enough to be considered a Texan, I think.
I think so. I always say I married a Texan. I have 2 kids now, born and raised in Texas. I don't like the Cowboys. Take that how you want it, but
exactly. Bears.
Actually, I'm a Texans fan now. Go figure. No, I grew up a Rams fan when they were in St. Louis, the greatest show on turf, and they moved out west again, and perfect time to jump ship and get on the Texans bandwagon.
Heck yeah, dude. Hey, I can get down with CJ Stroud, man.
Yeah, excited.
Hey, you got the banjo in the back, so it sounds very Texan-ish to me. So.
Yeah, that's mostly for show, but it looks good. It's a good conversation piece.
Yeah.
All right. So now to your question. Delayed mortality is a real thing. It would be impossible for Jake or I to predict the number of fish that died from any specific event. Things like water temperature, as temperatures increase, that probability increases. Things like bacterial transfer from your hands, from your boat, that's going to increase it. Things like if you have a mistake on the boat or an accident where maybe a pump goes out on a live well, those are going to increase your probability. Things like, does your weigh-in bag, is it perforated or is it a solid bag? How long did the fish stay in the bag? Did the did the tournament organizer have oxygen available to you or cold, fresh water available to you to put in your bag while you're waiting to weigh in? Those things are going to dictate delayed mortality. So it'd be impossible for biologists to tell you, like, hey, here's the percentage. Because the honest truth, Bailey, is throughout the year, that percentage could go from 0% delayed mortality up to 90%. And it depends on a lot of environmental factors. It depends on each person's unique situation. And it depends on the weigh-in circumstances.
Dang. Okay.
Come on, Bailey.
Hey, it was Justin's question for it, and it was one that I think a lot of people are very curious about.
It's a great question. And Jake, have y'all done any delayed mortality studies since you've been here?
Since I've been here, no. There have been some done, and on Fork, of which was had a great reason to do so, and folks were looking at tournament exemptions because of the big slot we have here. But for the same reasons you said, it's that data. It's sure it spits out percentages, but things have changed so much since then. Live wells, boats, aeration, oxygen, everything has changed so much. It's tough to even look at those numbers and say, here's what we're looking at, because there's so many variables that can change it without a doubt.
Yeah, and I think I talk about how the live wells evolved. Whenever we really think about, like, let's go back to 1970, 1960, some of those first tournaments, fish were brought in on a stringer. They were dead. And in the 1970s, as coolers were developed, and then live wells, eventually had aerators and recirculating pumps. It's been an evolution. Now we have some technology that's been available where you can add oxygen, or we understand how to add ice. We're still not monitoring live well like we would if you were a professional fish hauler. Whenever Texas Parks and Wildlife brings out a share lunker or gets a share lunker to take to spawn, or whenever I transport fish across the country to stock them into a private lake, we use things like dissolved oxygen. We cool the water. We use salt. We do some things within the containment of those fish to preserve their lives and make sure that they're as least stressed as possible. But we also monitor parameters within that contained environment, right? Like we're looking at dissolved oxygen. So if I asked you, Bailey, I think we've talked about this before, like what's your dissolved oxygen? What's your optimal dissolved oxygen in your live well? You could ask 1,000 anglers, 10,000 anglers, and not one of them would have an answer for you. There might be like that small handful that did have a fishery science degree that could answer that question, but very few, very, very few.
So I guess a question for you, Jake, in regards to, I guess, your main responsibilities in your position. I guess, what are the big things that you focus on then beyond just obviously the fisheries themselves?
Yeah, I love when I get asked this question, and I say it's literally every week of the year. It varies a lot. So Stephen mentioned I manage a ton of water. I've got about 26 major reservoirs that I'm responsible for, plus a bunch of other little tiny water bodies. So in a nutshell, I always say my job is to make anglers happy. That's a daunting task. It's usually it's futile a lot of times. I'm always making somebody upset at yelling at me for some reason. But so besides our routine monitoring, we're constantly keeping an eye on our populations. We do a lot of habitat work. We stock a lot of fish. I do a lot of public outreach. Right now, I've been doing some shows and podcasts like this quite a bit, trying to get some of our recent special projects and research out. Today I was on Fork hand pulling water hyacinth for about 6 hours. Terrible idea. Honestly, I'm very sore, and I think my whole staff is really pleased with me right now, but it was the right call for the right situation. So dealing with homeowners is every day. I get a lot of complaints from homeowners that live on lakes, but I deal with them trying to manage their needs with the best interests of the lakes and our habitat, and keeping our anglers happy. That's it in a nutshell, truthfully.
What I love about those lakes the most, like Fork, is you get out there and you see a lot of boats, but like 95% of everybody's fishing. You don't really see the wake boats, jet ski that often, at least in the experience that I've had down there, where it's the opposite.
There was actually a tuber on Fork today.
See, I feel like you're just
one of the rarities with
fire.
Yeah. It sounds dangerous to go to.
They were at least on the lower end. It's some of those places where they're just literally tubing in boat lanes, and it's like if you bounce off the tube and go 10 yards in one direction, you're going to bounce off a stump.
Yeah.
But, natural selection wins sometimes.
Yeah, that's a great way to phrase it. It's just basically human ping ball.
Yep.
So, I got a quick question. Is the water hyacinth new to Fork, or has it been there a while?
No, a lot of folks don't realize it's been there for decades at this point. It's it comes up, it comes down, it disappears. It's part of the reason I've kind of changed my whole approach for how we're managing hyacinth on the lake, because it's there. We're never going to get rid of it. The seabed has been established. So, a few years ago we had a drawdown. They had to do dam repairs. They dropped the lake 6 feet, which is a lot for Fork. So we were looking at just bare shorelines around the entire lake, nothing green, nothing growing. And a year later, we had hyacinth all over the lake again. And that seedbed is there. It's here to stay. It's more managed. From my perspective, we deal with it. I kind of let Mother Nature do her thing unless it's really a problem. If it's a biological concern, if it's choking off hundreds and hundreds of acres, we'll intervene. Otherwise, it's just kind of there right now.
I like that approach. Well, coming from an anchor, anyways, letting Mother Nature do her thing.
It makes me a little nervous too, to be honest, because even people within our own department are kind of like, "What are you doing? What?" And I'm like, yeah, it's I explain them the reason, and they kind of come around and get it. It's kind of I think a new approach even for us to just look at the situation and not just instantly say, "Oh, we got to nuke this. We got to get rid of it," because sometimes that's not going to help us either. It just depends.
Now that you got me thinking about it and visualizing, and you're talking about pulling the hyacinth, and it's July there. Do you ever run into gators while you're doing this stuff?
I actually said with where we were at in the lake today, the alligators aren't too thick. There's a few other arms. I don't know if y'all are familiar. Little Caney is one that it's if you wanted to go sightseeing, you could go there and see alligators. They're just that thick. Luckily, we are up in Birch Creek, and there's some gators there, I'm sure, but not as predictable. So that was one of the few things I wasn't worried about today.
I mean, this is the northerner in me, but yeah, I'd be freaking out every time I'm reaching down there.
I mean, you've had them like mating call next to you and chase you. So like, at this point.
But to be fair, I mean, Texas is a lot better than Lake Eufaula. Lake Eufaula is a little bit, I think, you're not allowed to hunt them there, I don't believe. So it's a little bit excessive. But yeah, before we go in a gator whole sidebar here, because I'm trying to avoid that because we'll go for a long time. The one thing I wanted to bring up was actually, so this email that was sent to me that I forwarded on to Steve because I wanted to talk about it, which is why we got you on the show here, Jake, is Jeremy Krismer, who listens to the show, came across to send it to us. And it's you guys completed a groundbreaking bass tracking study. And so would love to learn more about what this entails and what the study's all about.
Yeah, it was truthfully, it was kind of one of those I say was one of my dream projects. I honestly, before I was even a full-time employee, tracking fish is one of those things, especially bass, has just kind of been something I've always wanted to do. And of course, I couldn't just go out and do it without a good cause. So luckily, we kind of had the perfect scenario to really try and answer some questions come to us. And so start with a little backstory. Toledo Bend and Lake Fork, where we did both of these studies. Toledo Bend, I forget the exact years at this point, but I'm going to say 16, 17, maybe 15, when it was number one ranked on Bassmaster, back-to-back years, which was the first of its time. Best lake in the country. Fishing was phenomenal. Fast forward just a few years after that, and all of a sudden, anglers really started expressing concerns. Todd Driscoll, who just retired, actually, he was the biologist over Toledo Bend down there, and very tuned in with the angling community, tournament anglers as well. So getting concerns from credible folks saying, "Hey, we're not catching the fish we were. What's going on?" And it's like, even more, we're graphing on offshore places that traditionally hold lots of fish, and it's just a barren dead zone. What's going on? Likewise, Fork was a little bit different, but had similar overall purposes. Fork went through a big drought back in kind of 2011 through 2013. It started to refill in 14 and 15. So we had tons and tons of terrestrial vegetation, willows, other trees that all got flooded. Got a big boom from the good old-fashioned new lake effect, and everything you would expect to happen did. We had great spawns, great year classes. In 16 and 17, especially, anglers were saying, "Man, everything you said is happening. We're catching 100 fish in a day again at times. Mostly small fish from these great year classes, but we are catching a lot of fish. This is going to be awesome." Another year goes by, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, we're not catching those fish, and they should be, they were 1.5 pounds. They should be 3+ pounds now, 4 pounds. We're not seeing them. Where'd they go?" And another year's like, "Hey, we're back to catching 10 to 15 fish in a day, and we're not catching all those slot fish. What happened?" So kind of two different angles of what was going on, but it was still overall anglers expressing kind of concerns on declined catch rates, declined success. But our electrofishing data on both lakes were stable. So looking at our population surveys, we didn't see this massive shift that our anglers were seeing. So we all started saying, well, everyone talks about angling pressure, fish getting smart, fish maybe, avoiding anglers. So it was like both these lakes have tons of just massive, what I call no man's land on the lakes, just 30, 40, 50 feet of water out in the middle of nowhere, sometimes just nothing but open timber. Have these fish learn to avoid anglers? Are they moving off to new habitats? Or is it just boat noise itself or angling pressure? Are fish just moving to different areas? So how do we answer that? And that's kind of where we looked at, why not actually track them, look at their movements over the course of the year. So we started doing that in 2020. And we kind of had two cool angles to the study. One was our traditional telemetry work that you've seen done probably before that looks at fish movement, both throughout the seasons, maybe every week, every 2 weeks. It looks at the habitat they use. So from that, we could look at, all right, are these fish still utilizing the same habitats they have been? Are they in fact out in areas anglers wouldn't normally target? And then we kind of took it a little, I would say, one step further and said, well, what about boat noise? We anglers talk about it all the time. Does boat noise, does graphing over a long point or a hump, does that break up schools? Does it scare them off before you ever even get to fish for them? And wanted to kind of look at that, or even more, is physically fishing itself. Have fish learned to run away from lures? Does it scare them off? Is that part of what's going on? So we threw that part into it as well. After we'd locate a fish, we'd actually idle over it, graph around, and observe the fish through telemetry and actually with live scope, forward-facing sonar as well, to see if these fish were reacting to the boat noise or to angling pressure as well. And we got to do that over the course of 2 years and saw a lot of cool things.
So really fast for people tuning in, can you quickly give a quick definition of what telemetry means?
Yeah. So telemetry, there's two types. There's multiple types now, but telemetry is we physically put a little transmitter with a battery and surgically implanted in all of these fish. And these were radio transmitters. So it put out a radio frequency that we had a box that could pick up that sound and just essentially just a ping. So it allowed us to physically locate or monitor to almost essentially down to a stump where these fish were. We'd actively go out and track them and at times chase them down.
That's freaking sweet. So what kind of, I guess, if any, have you found any conclusions on that yet? If that's definitive that lures or certain, boating pressure is scaring these fish off?
Yeah. The study actually, so we did all the field work in 2020 and 21. So the fun part was all done. We're still doing some of the data analysis now. We've got a good chunk done. I actually have one part it's been published in our field now. So some of the really, I think, big take homes, like what I call almost unexpected, is the home range on these fish. So that's and throughout the course of the year, how much of an area in the lake were these fish frequenting? Where were they using most of the time? On Fork, especially, it was on average 12 acres. So that's, if you picture the entire course of a year, an individual fish was not really moving more than 12 acres in a year. It had 12 acres that it called home. And that was eye-opening. Now, Toledo was a little bit larger, but truthfully, it was still within that, what I would call unsuspectingly small home range. We didn't see this massive migration that I think a lot of anglers, myself included, think that, all the fish move up to the banks and they spawn. And then especially down here where it gets really hot, these fish move out to the main lake, all this offshore structure during the summertime. They start to scatter in the fall. They move to the very backs of the creeks chasing shad in the fall. Then wintertime comes and they all move out to the deep creek channels. That didn't happen. Not even close. In fact, again, 12 acres, a lot of these fish were within one little pocket that you could call a spawning pocket if you looked at it. And that's where they were the whole year. It didn't matter if the water temps were 95 degrees or 40 degrees. They were within that area. So that was a pretty big eye opener.
Yeah. They call that place home for sure.
No, exactly.
Home.
We had a few specific fish that honestly we tracked them every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks or 14 days we'd go out and locate them. We had a few fish that for a few months straight were on the exact same stump. Fork's full of timber, so it's not like that was special. That was the one tree out there. They stayed on that stump for a few months at a time. And we had, for folks wondering, there's these mortality sensors on these transmitters, so you if the fish died. These fish were alive, and at times we'd get to see them on live scope anyway. So they were chilling on this stump for months at a time for a few fish. Some moved a little bit more, but overall, like you mentioned home, it's a small area.
Jake, explain to them a little bit about the fish that weren't on structure, weren't on stumps. They were instead on the kind of undescripted flats.
The flats. Yep. Yeah. So that was another, trying to put this in a good angler term. So we characterized our study areas on these lakes. We broke it down into all the different habitat types. So points, humps, drains, creek channels, shoreline, and then everything else that essentially was just a featureless, no contour changes. Everything else was labeled as a flat. So it may not be your traditional spawning flat you think of, but just any part in these lakes that had just flat topography, whether it was in 2 feet or 30 feet, but just not really a contour change, were flats. And places that you could probably, consider no man's land in a lot of these. So about 40% of all of our fish were found in these areas. Places that you wouldn't look at a good topo map and say, I'm going to go idle around, I'm going to graph this, I'm going to fish this. But they were, in fact, kind of in no man's land. But to throw one caveat in that and to try and translate this, in a way we all get here, I guess, we looked at it in terms of total habitat available. So here's one thing to think about. 70% of all of the habitat that was in our study zones were flats. So a good chunk of the fish were there, but if you look at it proportionally for what available habitat they had, let's say, I forget the exact breakdown, but there was a far fewer amount of areas that had points, humps, creek channels, etc. There's a lot smaller percentage. So there's a ton of flat available for these fish. So if you looked at it overall, the fish still, by the data, by the numbers, they avoided flats, what we call a selection ratio. Essentially, they selected against flats. Most of these fish were still selecting for traditionally angler targeted areas, your points, drop-offs, creek channels, humps, whatever you want to call it. So yes, 40% of all the fish we tracked were on flats, but by what was available there, fish were clearly still selecting for areas you would expect to go target when fishing.
Now, in this study, did you measure a lot of the fish by size that you put like the transmitters in, right?
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
when you were breaking down the numbers in your study, like what was the difference in size of fish that were in structure and like spawning pockets as opposed to on the flats? Like when you found these fish in the quote unquote flats, were they bigger than average fish and more like lone roamers? Or were you finding like small groups of small fish on flats, etc.?
Yeah, another great question. And not to be boring here, but size didn't matter on that, for lack of a better word. So our fish were anywhere from 14 inches up to about 24 and a half inches long. So roughly 1.5 pounds up to a little over 8 pounds for our biggest fish at this time. And there wasn't really any correlation on habitat utilization and fish size. We saw a few discrepancies or places where fish over 20 inches, when we start looking at the boat noise reactions or things of that nature, we saw some differences and probably what anglers would expect on that front. But in terms of habitat they were using, or whether there were more big fish that were loners out roaming the flats, or size honestly didn't matter. There were just as many of our larger fish on areas that we would all want to fish to begin with.
That's crazy, that, because I guess if you put it that 40%, that's a lot of fish that aren't living by the quote unquote textbook that anglers love to use as a
I didn't get that book.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
That's exactly what Jake is explaining.
We kind of, what's that?
I was gonna say that's exactly what you're explaining though.
What'd you say?
Whenever we take the textbook, we say fish are going to live on the shore for X part of the year, spawn, and then they're going to move offshore. They're going to cover, then they're going to move up and feed, then they're going to go and they're going to overwinter somewhere. What Jake's explaining to us is the majority of those fish have a much smaller home range. For fisheries managers, that means one thing. For anglers, that means another thing. But also, 60% of those fish are going to be around those obvious targets, which may mean that 40% is less exploited, right? So the 40% may be easier to catch.
Absolutely.
Because they don't see as much boat traffic. They don't see as much lure presentation. The 60% that is in that predictable place is actually there more often than you think it should be there. Those may be places that you should be visiting in those summer months and winter months that you're ignoring them. So it's kind of a really revolutionary study, and it's got some implications for fisheries management. But Jake and Todd have done a great job, and their teams have done a great job. And I've seen Todd present this. I've seen Jake's notes on it. And like he's saying, they're still exploring the data because there's so much. You track fish for this long, there's so much.
That's wicked.
No, absolutely. And, on that same, one of our big take homes, that 40% on flats, in all honesty, I think we see more of that in the angling world now with forward facing sonar. It kind of opens up those fish a little bit more, truthfully. It makes them maybe a little bit easier to target. What was before truly a needle in a haystack. When you're talking about 70% of our entire area there's nothing special about it. There's nothing to say, all right, here's where they're going to concentrate. You just have to go out and search. We kind of, I think technology has helped folks unlock that to maybe catch those fish a little bit better now.
Yeah. And so I want to hit on this really fast because as of late, we try to just steer away from the whole forward-facing conversation.
Sure.
As I think people like to, deter from it. But I know there's going to be people that are going to DM and ask us about this or have wished we've asked it. So I'm going to just present it as, from your position, have you seen any impacts on, Lake Fork being arguably one of the biggest names, if not the biggest name for a lake, lake name in the country? Have you seen an impact on the fish yet? At least one that you think is noticeable enough to even to speak of?
Sure. In short, no. And it seems like whenever anybody I've talked to recently about the telemetry work, we inevitably we come to this regardless whether we want to or not with forward facing sonar. And we have a whole nother study we looked at that kind of tried to look at the impacts of forward facing sonar, or at least characterize our anglers in Texas and who's using it, what their catch rates are, everything else. And a big take home for bass: people don't harvest bass. If they're not harvesting bass, is it really going to impact population abundance? And I mean, the answer functionally is no. There's a whole untapped part of, well, are we fishing for bass that traditionally weren't getting pressured at all, and is that going to impact catchability down the road? Honestly, don't know. Is that a question that comes up? It is, but in the big picture right now, it's not impacting, especially in terms of population, the numbers of fish. It's not at all. We even looked at it on crappie, a very harvest-oriented species, and saw similar things. I'm not going to go off on crappie here, but we pretty much proved that in Texas, with our growth rates for crappie, anglers would have to harvest over 80% of all crappie in a lake over 10 inches before we saw the population start to dwindle. Harvesting 80% of all 10-inch crappie is essentially impossible. So on a large system, especially.
That's incredible.
So yeah. So long and short, right now, well, we don't have any. We don't see giant changes or giant concerns.
So I'm gonna pitch this to both of you. This question, with all the, I think more anglers are learning, especially with one having you guys in the forefront of all these studies, but also with forward-facing sonar. They're learning a lot of what we were saying earlier. The textbook might not be the best, the most accurate guide to how bass behave or bass fishing in general. What do you think right now is the biggest bass fishing misconceptions that you guys have essentially debunked in doing this research, if that makes any sense?
Sure. Misconception, I think, is fish migrations. I mean, what we just talked about, the big point of this, that fish are not just moving, especially seasonally. I can say just as much as I was shocked that they didn't all flock out to offshore structure in the summertime. I think how many times have anglers heard, oh, in the fall, all the shad go to the backs of the creek. So get in the backs of the creeks, follow the shad because that's where the bass are. Didn't see any of that, none. And we saw the shad move. I mean, on these lakes during these times, I mean, without a doubt, shad piled into the backs of these big creeks. Our fish didn't follow them. So were there fish there where all the shad were? Absolutely, but we didn't see our fish move and chase after them without a doubt. It didn't happen.
Wow. Steve, what about you, man?
Well, I want
to biggie.
I want to add to what Jake just said, because you have two very different systems. Fort, acts a certain way, but Toledo Bend acts a very different way, right? So saying that both of those systems seeing the same result adds a lot of weight to what he's talking about here. Because you could say in Toledo, fish should move. Fish have that available habitat, and not seeing it utilized in that way is extremely important. So what Jake and Todd put together it's just one of the coolest studies that there is. I'm so glad y'all got this question, Bailey. I think for me, whenever I read it, we talk about how fish orient around habitat, maybe 90% of the fish around 10% of the body of water. That was an old adage we heard so many times. And it seems like the actual truth to that may be that, 90% of the fish that you catch are around 10% of the habitat. But the truth is there's fish just about everywhere. A lower percentage of fish may live on the flats, but they're there. And if that is the only available habitat, and then we use that as kind of a management tool, there's some unique things we can do to manipulate fish populations as well in those flats. So I think that's cool. I think also you can't ignore the part of your study, Jake, where you really look at how seasonal impacts on the noise avoidance happens, to where in the winter months fish want to avoid noise more than in the summer months. Like, it's unbelievable. So, so weather or season impacts how close you can fish. Like that's too cool to.
That's pretty wicked.
No, absolutely. And to kind of drive off of that, that was looking at the boat noise and how fish reacted. The winter months are when we saw fish being essentially the most likely to move from boat noise. So colder water temps, that time of year when everyone thinks fish are lethargic, they're sluggish, they're just inactive. And they very well, we couldn't gauge if that fish was truly inactive or not, but they were very temperamental. They reacted the most frequently to boat noise during the winter months.
That's incredible. I mean, people probably would have
something to chew on.
Summer. Yeah, they would have figured something completely opposite.
Do you think maybe it's because in the wintertime they're used to there being less boats on the water, so when they hear that noise, they're like, what is that? And they kind of get startled. And then in the summertime, they might be more used to hundreds of boats running around on a body of water at once. They're like, oh, that's just normal daily life at this point. Or are we getting too hypothetical there with that question?
Well, in all honesty, all you can really do, even with the data we have, is get a little hypothetical. So truthfully, great question. I've even looked at it before as, tried to link it to temperamental people when they're cold and they're just a little grumpier. So they might be a little bit more likely to be in a bad mood and shrug off from something that's bugging them. But like you said, that's a potential. I can tell you to kind of talk about this a little bit more. Throughout the entire course of the study, all lakes, all fish combined, seasons combined, fish reacted to boat noise 60% of the time, 59 and change, but 60% of the fish we were locating and moving up on reacted to boat noise. So
that's
another, I would say, pretty big eye opener, things that folks kind of discuss, and grandpas of old said, be quiet, be stealthy. We kind of confirm that to some extent.
Hey, Jake, I hate to put you on the spot here. Can you tell me the percentage of Florida genetic in each one of the reservoirs?
It obviously it varies. I can tell you on average, Forks 45 to 60, typically 50 to 60 on average. I think Toledo being a little bit further south, a little bit warmer on average, just by a little. It's a little bit higher, but still, I believe if I'm going to say around 60%, I'd have to, that's not my lake. I couldn't tell you for sure. Still,
so
around, overall 40 to 60.
I would slightly caveat a lot of the findings with the fact that we're dealing with what we call an integrated species, right? A cross between a Florida and a northern largemouth bass. So, you replicate this in a Great Lakes system or something like that, and it may very well change because you're dealing with a different species of fish. But I think what he's talking about, cooler water, having those seasonal changes, that's just amazing to me.
And so to add on that, I don't know if you were able to, I guess, get any theory from this, but Mike B has a question here. When you say boat noise, do you mean main engine running or even the trolling motor? Which a lot of people, they say when they're shallow, it's trolling motor low and turn your electronics off type of deal. Are you able to put any, I guess, answer to
great
that?
question. And so that 60%, that is the big engine running. So this was mostly trying to simulate if our fish were located deep, the same thing that folks graphing around and looking over structure, kind of doing figure 8 circles, whatever. When our fish were shallower, it was still, both of these lakes especially, vast amounts of timber. There's a lot of places when you're going to fish shallow, you're idling through, bouncing off stumps just to get to where you want to fish. So this is still simulating essentially a boat approaching to fish shallow water. So all of those are big motor only. Now, the fun part, where I always joke that people say we get paid to go fishing. If the fish that didn't move from our boat, we actually looked at, we pulled up on them and we get to make 5 flips or 5 casts to that fish if we had it located and knew where it was. So at that point, we got to look a little more about angling itself. So that could be anything from the trolling motor was down, trolling motor noise, casting, splash of the lure going by it, noise of the lure, all of those things, and how much that could move a fish that didn't react to the big motor.
That's freaking impressive. And
Casey Hapler, in your comments on YouTube, also brings in the topic of water density. And, for Jake and I, whenever water cools, it becomes more dense. So that does manipulates how sound moves through water. So that's a great comment by Casey as well.
Yeah.
Yes, this is where I wouldn't have known that. I think the average angler is like, water density, what do you mean? Has no idea how that impacts the bass.
Yeah.
Yeah, water gets heavier as it gets colder.
No, that's a great point as well. Yep.
So if it's more dense, it means it doesn't transmit as much sound through water. So if that's the case, that makes it even more interesting that they move more in the winter versus summer.
Me and Jake are going to look at you with blank faces right now because both of us are like, yeah, noise and density is not our expertise, buddy.
No,
none of this is my expertise.
That's a little too much chemistry, if you want me to be honest.
Yeah, we don't even have podcasts. We don't know how noise works.
Yeah, it's. I'm glad I got my light to work tonight, to be honest. But
I will throw out there in terms of audio. I think this is the first time that Steve has come on in the recent history that his audio worked flawlessly when we added him into the stream. So he's figuring something out. All right, like
yeah. I'm in a hotel in Baton Rouge, and I just went straight laptop.
I guess that's the move from now on.
That's the move, man. That's the move.
So in the comments as well, Tom Mix here was asking you, Steve, if you know how the giant salvinia battle is going on in Texas.
That is one of those seasonal year in, year out debates. The hardest part with any invasive species control, I don't care what state you have, what we can do as managing authorities is very limited compared to what Mother Nature can do in one season. And you have one good winter, and all of a sudden you've killed multiple thousands of acres of giant salvinia. And then we go back at it and we're like, well, we controlled 15 acres this year and we did a great job, And so, Tom, it it changes every single year based on the winter that we have. I think that the truth is there are areas where that plant has become so ingrained in the ecosystem, it's always going to be there. We're not going to eradicate it completely. Then there's other areas where both through using some biologic control, herbicide control, mechanical control, and seasonal weather control, we really get some open water again. I don't know, at least from my perspective, Jake may jump my throat on this one, but I don't know that it's became the invasive problem that we thought it was going to be. It has limited itself, or maybe weather's limited the plant itself to where it doesn't feel like we have to get up in arms every time we see it.
Interesting.
No, I agree completely. And every, I kind of hinting that earlier with the hyacinth stuff, every lake is different, and every lake should be treated different on how it's managed with invasive vegetation. A lake like Caddo up, northeast Texas, that's essentially a swamp, very shallow, very protected. Those, invasive species can and do still expand rapidly and are problematic and need a lot more aggressive actions just to keep any boat lanes open at times, just to have access at all. Our bigger systems, Rayburn, Toledo, Fork to a large extent, it's tough for lakes like those that are so wide open in areas to have these species really ever cause biological impacts or even access impacts. So you have to look at every lake a little bit differently. It's not there should be a cookbook on this of when the species pops up, you just go instantly shoot to eradicate it. I think you manage it for the lake and what's best for that lake.
Is it, Mike? I'm trying to picture it here because I think I've been around the Sylvania. Actually, I was on it specifically on Caddo Lake, but that's the one that doesn't have any stem connection to the ground. It kind of just free floats around with the wind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
That and hyacinth, and giant Sylvania. What's crazy about it in the right environment, it can almost triple in size in a week. Whoa. So that's what makes it so problematic at times. If you in the perfect protected growing environment, not a lot of wind, lots of good sunlight, it can what's this size in a week becomes this and this and this, and it
so you're talking about
snowballs quickly. So that's
the quantity that's there.
I think
the quantity that's there. Okay. So the plant at most, the total quantity. So the plant when it's fully grown is only one plant's about that big, but that plant can become a football field in no time.
Yeah, he's saying maybe a $50 size.
To look like
Jake, we're on a podcast. A $50 size.
Perfect.
Don't yell at
this video doesn't help anything. Yes. It's not the first time I've done that. And people are like, this video is not helping you at all. You have to describe it, but appreciate that.
Nick, you just say the word and we'll boot Steve from this, and we can just let you take it from here.
No, we're good so far. There's no
hey, I told y'all he was going to be an excellent guest.
Yeah. We're definitely going to have to get you on more, dude. Seriously, it's learning a lot from this show, way more than we ever learned with Steve. So I think we'll just skip asking Steve, and we'll get
the only thing I'll offer anybody's podcast is a Rolodex of great biologists that I can introduce you to.
So funny enough, that's actually going to be one of my last questions for you, Steve, for tonight. But
okay.
I'll save that for when we get there.
Save it.
Andy, do you have anything for these guys before we start wrapping this thing up?
Oh man, I had one on my head. You might have to come back to me. I lost it.
Okay. I can come back.
I'm sorry.
I guess with that, when we were talking about your study of tracking these bass migrations and how you've noticed them on Lake Fork, I guess I'll pitch this to both of you guys if you know of any connection, because I know obviously, Steve, we were recently chatting with a group about some of northern fisheries, and I'm curious if anyone's done anything on smallmouth yet, because people say that smallmouth moves so much more than largemouth do, but it'd be cool to actually put specific data behind that theory.
Yeah, so you have 30 years of research, especially you've seen the pit tags that have the call-in number. where you're talking about, fish that are released at a specific site. And then if you catch this fish with a tag on it, you're supposed to call a number. We have 30 plus years of data on surveys like that. Telemetry data is a little more difficult to actually like capture because you have to track the specific fish. And a lot of the systems that smallmouth live in, they just disappear. They get too deep, they get outside of the sounder range, and they show back up at some point. So some of those studies do exist, Bailey, but nothing like what this study has done at Fork and Toledo Bend.
See, I don't know if you follow Rob Matsura. He's one of the camera guys for MLF. And have you seen his videos where he literally swims with the smallmouth? I think you just need to employ him with a couple scuba tanks and let him just follow that fish around. I think that's a good plan.
Just let him go.
Yeah. It sounds like in a short answer, though, that Steve, you're saying yes, smallmouth move a lot more because they just disappear.
Some of the studies have shown that smallmouth are much more willing to cross deep water than largemouth upon release. Their home ranges are much larger. They are impacted more like by spawning site, to where you have historic spawning grounds for smallmouth, and generationally those spawning grounds are reutilized. Smallmouth also spawn in more of a community base rather than solo like largemouth will. So you're talking about two very different species that react in the environment, extremely different. So I think there's a lot of differences. Also, the size of the systems that you really are talking about tracking, their movement is much greater.
Yeah.
Well, with your
one thing I'll add to that,
go ahead.
Sorry. One thing I'll add with that, if you think about Toledo Bend and Fork, both of these lakes, the fish pretty much just has to open his eyes to see everything he needs in life. Both these lakes are forage rich, no matter what depth you're in, full of shad, full of sunfish, habitat rich, timber. Vegetation was actually lower for both of these lakes at this time, but there's still enough there. They have everything they want pretty much just to sit there and be fat and happy without having to chase and roam and move a lot more. So I think that's something to consider as well. When fish are ultimately a very simple creature. They want to eat, they want to reproduce, they want to survive. If you have all those things and you have a comfortable environment you're in, there's not nearly as much to push you to move around. So that's just one way to look at it. They're probably part of the puzzle.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Like when you're talking timber, like you can go every 5 foot and find a new piece of timber. Whereas out in the Great Lakes, you might find a couple boulders here, but then your next couple boulders aren't going to be for another 1.5 miles. So you might have to travel a little bit farther.
Exactly.
That makes sense. You're so, yeah. Okay. That means maybe not in nature. They're just forced to move more.
Possibly.
See, I love this conversation. This is awesome. So it would be in your Rolodex of people, Steve. We'd love to. It'd be cool to get a part 2. Let's get you guys back on, add somebody else from the north, and then really dive into this conversation. That could be pretty dang cool. But yeah, it is insane to see when we have the right people like you guys out there putting some of these theories to the test. This is the stuff we'll love shining light on. Great comment here from Mike B that says that explains why I always stay near my fridge.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Smart man.
Yeah, go ahead. He won the contest for tonight. Send him something, Bailey.
We can send him something. Hey, what Steve asked, Steve gets. So Mike, reach out. We'll get you some Blackfish gear.
Nice.
Send us an email or DM, and then send Steve a DM and thank him because he just forced a giveaway on the show.
Steve, because you forced the giveaway, why don't you give him something too? How's that sound?
Yeah. If you get Bailey your contact information, I'll send you a T-shirt or a hat or something cool.
There we go.
Why not a free day at one of your private lakes, bro? Come on now.
If you'll join him, we got a deal.
I can do that. It's just my arm.
I'll tell Jake to bring the telemetry stuff too. We'll track them.
Let's do it.
Release them.
Honestly, I think I would be more interested in doing that than actually going and fishing.
Same.
I would love to do that. At least be a shadow behind you guys and seeing how it all goes down. That would be really cool.
Can I? We got 10 minutes. Can I give a black eye to your study real quick, Jake? Tell them how hard these surgeries are to do. Tell them why we can't just do thousands of fish a year.
Oh, do you want the part about why we killed all the fish at first, or the part about why it's, each fish is, we're literally cutting it open and stitching it shut, or why tracking each fish takes at times 30 minutes to an hour per fish to locate? There is a lot of pains up front.
Yeah, so tell them about the first 30 fish you did.
The dead ones. Yeah, we luckily this was mostly Todd's fish. He drew the short straw, or got lucky, went out there first. So we tried to start this in the fall of 2019, and Todd went out in Toledo, put out close to 30 bass, and we had practiced for months and months and months on suture dummies, on dead fish, everything. We were comfortable with the procedure. Stitched up about 30 fish, let them all go. They all swam off perfectly fine. Everything looked great. Todd was on cloud 9 after that. And he went out 2 weeks later, went to track, and within 2 weeks, well over, I think 60 or 70% of the fish had already died. Through a major red flag. And luckily he called me, because I was about to go out to Fork the next day and put a bunch of fish out. And he said, "Hey, most of our fish are already dead. You might want to hold off on putting more tags out." And I know we don't have much time, so we dove into a whole other study of what happened there, and kind of found out with bass in southern climates, potentially with a lot of Florida influence, their immune system is crazy vulnerable in the fall when the water temps crash. If the water temps crash rapidly, their immune system can crash, and we happen to time that just perfectly to kill a lot of fish. So there was an early on failure, and we lost a lot of tags, wasted a lot of tags in the process.
Well, the moral of the story is science is dirty, and to learn these things, you got to get our hands dirty. We're going to have a little bit of mortality that happens. Luckily, they perfected the surgery. They've had a great study since then. The tags themselves, what do they last? About a year, Jake?
About a year. Yeah, we were hoping, honestly, we were going for a little bit longer, but yeah, they were about almost to the day on some 365 days. The batteries died, but still plenty of data.
So what was determined the best time per se to install these trackers?
Sure. Truthfully, we looked at May and June is when we put most of them out. Even some of them, I was shocked, because we actually, some of these fish we caught rod and reeled, because we wanted to get some fish out of deep water, not just electrofishing, and not so people didn't say, "Well, of course your fish stayed shallow. You shocked them all up. Those were just shallow fish." So we caught some fish out of 20 to 30 feet of water, up, and at that time of year, we're talking 75 plus degree water temps up into the 80s in June. So we were kind of skeptical if those would make it or not. We had to fizz most of those fish before we even worked on them. We didn't really see a difference in mortality on those, even, to be honest. But so most of them were May and June.
That's impressive.
It was really fun. Honestly,
can I do Hayden's question now? The second one.
Which one?
Second one. So Hayden asked, who's responsible for making sure license fees goes back into the resources and not out into all other government programs? And this is a great question. So just so you know, whenever you purchase a fishing license, as well as when you purchase a piece of fishing gear has excise taxes that should go back into the Sport Fish Restoration Fund. So all those dollars go through your state legislation through an appropriation bill, and it's appropriated to your state agency. And every state agency has what's called a sunset. And a sunset is basically a time when the agency has to prepare a report as to how they spent that money. And then they present it to your legislation. If your legislation approves of how they spent that money, then they'll reappropriate those funds for the future generations, until the next sunset. If they don't, the reason it's called a sunset is because they can just close the agency down. They can say, you're not appropriating those funds the right way. You're not spending them the right way, so we're going to shut your agency down. So, Hayden, there's multiple processes there where your agents, your legislature, your state legislature is going to appropriate the funds. They're going to say this is what they're used for, and then your agency has to prove that that actually happened that way. Great question.
Yeah. Thanks for answering that, Steve.
Of course.
All right. Well, gents, we're going to wrap things up here in a second. I mean, first off, I just want to say thank you to both of you guys for taking the time out. Jake, it's great to get you on this show. Unfortunately, we had to bring Steve along too, but Steve, you're always appreciated nonetheless. But
thanks, guys.
Yeah, I'm just kidding, buddy. Always appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, you guys are always welcome on this show because every time we get you on, Steve, like we always learn something new. And Jake, the information was freaking cool to hear about that study and the things you guys learned from that. So as we wrap up, we got some fun questions for you guys. And Jake, being that it's your first time on the show, we got to hit you with our a question that we asked everybody at the end for their first time on the show. So we'll kick off with you first here, and that is, if you could invite 3 different people to dinner, have a steak, have a beer, pick their brain, what 3 individuals would you invite? I mean, they could be alive 1,000 years ago, today, fishing, non-fishing, could be anybody.
Wow, that's a good one.
Not you.
Sorry, Steve. We can just discuss some other time. He doesn't make the list this time. Man, that's a phenomenal question. Of all time, I'm gonna say, I hope I don't get political here one way or the other. And honestly, it's fine. But I'm fascinated. Honestly, I'm gonna put Donald Trump as one of them right now. It's a current event one. We're gonna go with one alive. Take it how you want. I would love to pick that man's brain. I think that would be phenomenal. Okay. Truthfully, some people I'm not as tied into them, but Johnny Morris would be one that would come to mind. Just as a man that I think is a pioneer for our industry. I gotta throw that one out there. And I mean, I'd go third. I'm gonna go political. I'm gonna go industry. Then I'd probably go with probably my grandpa, who was a diehard angler from long ago, and never really got to fish with him a lot. And I think that would just be a really cool tie there. If I looked at a little bit of family, industry, and politicians all as one, I think that'd be a good mix.
I love that, dude. That'd be one interesting
good
conversation.
On the spot question. Yeah. I can only imagine.
Yeah. Well, so the next one is kind of similar. Steve, I'll pitch it to you, but Jake, feel free to add in here as well. But who would be your guys' Mount Rushmore of freshwater fisheries biologists?
That's a great question. Let's do it together. So we got to pick 4, right? Dang it, this can be tough.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying not to seem too biased to Texas right now as well, but
I feel like though Texas does earn its right because you guys are leading the way.
I'm gonna say Henshaw first, Clark Henshaw. Henshaw was basically the first person to kind of catalog all the black bass species and wrote a book called More About the Black Bass. That would be a really good one. Carl Hubbs would be another good one. Hubbs is a kind of historic figure for us because of so many things that happen for black bass species. Jake, you got any others?
Yeah, I'm thinking more again. I'm probably biased from. Did you know or familiar with Roy Heidinger at all? He was a Southern Illinois Carbondale professor forever. One of those guys that I think really kind of he spit out. He was responsible for educating and spitting out a lot of great biologists for a long, long time. That school at one point I think was kind of a powerhouse for where a lot of great folks came from, and I think he was one of the real reasons that he spit out a ton there. And I'm correct. I'm having a bit of a brain fart on this one, but the South Dakota professor who's passed away now as well. That
Dave Willis. Dave Willis.
Willis, thank you.
Yeah.
Willis is another iconic one.
Helped kind of revolutionize more modern pond management. I think one that maybe we skipped over would be Dick Anderson. Dick Anderson is the guy that created relative weight, which is the body condition score that we use for largemouth bass across the nation. So every biologist on every report uses his formula. I mean, there's the people that practice fisheries management, especially in the 70s and 80s. That was really the heyday of getting to do the experiments without having to worry about the repercussions of what was going to happen. Those are back in the days when you could take a peacock bass and stock it in Houston and call it management and see what happens.
The golden years.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
No, that is honestly, that's such a tough question overall and such a great one. And he's right. Those eras, those people did all in some capacity the real work. They left us with scraps to kind of get creative and think about what else we could look at, because they kind of just paved the way for fundamentals of fish management.
Yeah. And that's Steve, I think this is a great idea for maybe obviously you guys are very busy people, but that could be kind of a cool content series of shining light on some of the historic, foundation, of biologists in our sport, freshwater, saltwater, whatever it may be. But that could be pretty cool. I'm gonna be honest. I think Hubs might be the only one of that group that I actually recognize the name. And I feel like as an angler, I'm doing a disservice to our sport not knowing them.
Henshaw's in your Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. So if you ever walk through the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, you'll see Henshaw. He was inducted in 2018, same year as Gary Klein and Kevin Van Dam. So what an induction class, right?
Yeah, it's big time.
It's big time. Father of modern bass fishing, two of the greats.
Yeah. That's awesome. Love to dig in more. Maybe that's something we'll have to spin over to like a Ken Duke too, because him and the big.
Oh man, yeah. Ken Duke, Terry Battisti, those guys, they got all the history you need. When it comes to scientists, there's a lot of them that are, number one, still alive. Number two, some of them are still practicing. Some of them are still professors. So I don't know. Maybe there's a world where we have a couple on the show.
Hey, you invite them, we'll have them on the show, because you said you got the Rolodex. So
I got the Rolodex.
Get you guys on to, and we'll make us a whole panel, if you will. We'll do we can make it a quarterly thing.
Well, I'm just glad you had Jake on. Jake is one of those guys that he's not on Rushmore, but he's out in the trenches. He's out in the trenches on one of our favorite lakes. He's got a big territory. He's got big shoes to fill. Filling Todd Driscoll's shoes even is big shoes to fill.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Jake is also one of those outstanding biologists that talks like we talk as anglers. So I'm glad you had him on, because it means a lot to me, to see him on your show.
Yeah, and Jake would definitely love to get you on more, man. It was a pleasure.
Oh, likewise, I appreciate it. I love getting to do this part of my job as well, truthfully. I get to branch out from just the hardcore nerdy science stuff and try and talk like a normal person once in a while. It's fun, so thanks.
Yeah.
I mean it.
How often are you contacted by anglers like at Fork and different fisheries?
Oh my gosh, anglers! If you were to talk about, let's put anglers and homeowners together, because people don't realize how much of a challenge that side is, and it's daily. I mean, it is in some capacity every single day. So
you at least have like the work.
You get really good at balancing emails. Yeah, it's you learn to prioritize, and there's sometimes you're like these aren't going to go anywhere. Where I do my best to get a hold of everybody, but it's daunting on a lake like Fork and some of the other ones we have. People are needy.
Yeah. Yeah, you ain't kidding. Well, fellas, seriously appreciate you guys taking the time out. Does not go undervalued, and you guys' expertise is much appreciated by us, but as well as everybody watching and listening in, and looking forward to getting you guys on the next one. We can really dive deep. And hey, I'll say long-term scheduling, extremely long-term. The Classic's going to be down in Texas again. We'll happily treat you guys to dinner and dive into some more of this conversation in person. I think that could be pretty dang cool.
Only if Andy's coming.
Yeah, he has no choice now. Well, cool.
I'd love to. That'd be great. And it's close to me, so that'd be great.
Awesome. Well, fellas, appreciate you guys, and we'll be talking to you both real soon.
Thank you, Bailey. Thank you, Andy.
Guys. Yeah. See you soon.
I removed the wrong person. I removed you for a second. I said, "See you, Andy."
That's
Bye.
fine. That's fine. I'm used to it. No, it's like awesome.
Well, dude, that was awesome. Thank you again to Steve and Jake for taking the time out, and thank you to Justin earlier on in the first part of the show. For our Friday MP3 listeners, make sure you guys go and backtrack and listen to that one. But man, definitely an awesome night and a great start to my my 4 days I get to go on the Susquehanna River, because I'm literally turning this video out, or this podcast out, editing everything, getting it up, and starting my drive to the Susquehanna River, because we launch and start fishing at 5:15 a.m. on Saturday. So I want to get out and see what that's like. So that's in 7 hours. So I'm gonna try and get there.
Good news is it's not that terrible of a drive. It's like 4.
That's pretty easy. It's under 4. Where I'm gonna go launch is 3 hours 45 minutes. So it's not bad.
For you, that's like a stone throw.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, I fished tournaments in New York this year that are longer than that one. I mean, the tournament up in the Adirondacks was 5.5, I think.
Yeah.
And I got a couple more up that way. So it's not really worried about the drive part. It's just want to make sure the people get a good show. And so appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight live. I know there was a bunch of other shows. I know it's a Wednesday night where usually it's Tuesday night. I know a bunch of people are watching, Stray Cast. I know they had Taku on tonight. Looking forward to tuning into that show. Pat always does a great job over at Stray Cast. But man, anything the folks need to know, Andy, coming up on your end?
Schedule is almost full through October for guide trips. So if you want to get out, shoot us a message or give us a call, and we'll try to get you in. And my spring next year is even starting to get pretty full. So, and I got to work around a bunch of stuff next year. So it's going to be a little bit harder to get a good date. So make sure you set it up sooner than later. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on some prime time.
Yeah, you're going to be busy coming to the Classic.
Yeah, the Classic. Hopefully we can try to get the Red Crest. I'm going to Florida in April for a week. Like going to LA in January for a wedding. So I got a big travel year in 2025 in the first quarter. So
yeah, I think I might honestly, again, it's July, not when I actually try planning out my year, but might backtrack a little bit on the tournaments, because I signed up for 20 of them this year, and that on top of my work travel is a lot, and trying to get podcasts out. So,
well, what happened was you decided not to fish as many big national trails, and you decided, I can fish every weekend at home.
Yeah, pretty much. I said, I'll just fish every freaking local tournament there is, which I do enjoy them all. So it's the crew we have in New York they're a bunch of good dudes who I'm staying with this week. Shout out to Pat and Jose, who I'm going to be kicking it with for the weekend. But man, I am excited to get rolling, get down the Susquehanna River, tune into my personal socials if you want to see some shallow river smallmouth bass in action. But Andy, great show tonight. And I think let's call it there.
Yeah. Safe travels, buddy.
Yeah, I guess looking forward to next week, folks. Tuesday Night Live. We'll be back with that. And I know we are still trying to get a couple more guests for the night, but as of right now, we do have Logan Parks locked in for next Tuesday. Nice. So come join us then Tuesday Night Live, 8 p.m. Eastern. Otherwise, for MP3 folk, we'll see y'all on Wednesday morning. Peace.